But it's my absolute pleasure to introduce John, Gieryn and Nancy Gibson. They'll be facilitating a discussion on pods, a practice of small groups for mutual support and strengthening networks. Over to you, John and Nancy.
Well, great. Kia ora koutou again. Welcome everyone who's just stepped in now. My name is John Gieryn. I'm a member of Enspiral and a catalyst. And I'm here with my co-host, who's also part of the working group that does this pods work at Enspiral. Nancy, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, really lovely to be here. I've just come out of a fantastic meeting, so I'm kind of buzzing. So hopefully, hopefully we'll be able to give you some information and facilitate a process here. Looking forward to it.
Awesome. And so here we are going to start sharing my screen, talking about pods, by which we mean small groups, often characterized by mutual support and care. And we're talking about these small groups in the context of ecosystems or networks. Enspiral is a network of groups and people who want to do more work on stuff that matters and see other people doing more work on stuff that matters. So people aimed at impact and sustainability and well-being, like the kaupapa of this conference. And so today we're just going to share a little bit about these pods and then do a little bit of breakout action in time for you to think about just the couple lessons that we've learned. We've been working on these pods for 2.5 years, and really, you know, we're not the first one to name small group practice by any means. There's lots of whakapapa here, multiple lineages, but we have done 8 experiments now that have helped get together around probably 20, 25 small groups using kind of the framework that we've developed. And again, we'll share a little bit more about what those small groups look like, what they were doing, and kind of the basis for this. But I wanted to first talk a little bit to why of pods. And so on an individual level, what we were hoping to do with these is support people to be seen, to feel belonging, to experience mutual support and care, grow their social capital, meet more people, make connections, know who has skills that could help them in their, again, we're in a context of a social enterprise ecosystem of sorts, people trying to do projects to make the world a better place, and learn through being and doing together. How do we go about this work in a way that's helpful? And we started naming this project and started doing these what we call rounds, where we invite people to group up and then start a group that meets regularly, in part because we wanted the Enspiral network to become more diverse. Enspiral's a network of 120 folks around the world, but we are Pakeha led in majority Pakeha. We are mostly here in New Zealand. We're mostly white. And you know, we're doing the work to be more welcoming and I guess culturally competent, multiculturally competent, to be able to welcome that in. So inviting people into small groups where they can connect face to face felt like one way towards that, and also a way that who's coming in can quickly get to know people in our network, so better onboarding, increasing resilience with more connectedness, and also helping to spark more projects and collaborations as people meet one another. So the last thing I want to kind of take you through briefly before we start engaging with each other a little bit more is these 4 elements that we've encountered that seem to really help people get their hands around these practices and help people quick start or strengthen the groups they're meeting. So those 4 are a shared intention, some principles, some rituals or activities, and some groups use a format. So the intention is, what are we here to do together? Whether that's reading a book club, study group, we're following a course together, or a lot of our groups have started around peer coaching, supporting one another in our workplaces or personally and professionally. principles being rules, protocols, how often are we meeting, who's facilitating, are we passing around that role. Then we have a number of rituals. And so these are practices that boost the interactivity of your calls. So check-ins, moments of silence at the beginning, got case clinics here. So having one person in a hot seat of sorts. We also call them project kitchens sometimes, where people bring a challenge and everybody else gives them a little bit of attention and support. So I might share a challenge and you all might tell me some different perspectives or questions that I hadn't considered. And finally, a format kind of wraps up some of these things together. You might think of a curriculum, you know, you get that schedule of here's what we're going to do over the first week, here's what we're going to do over the second week, the different modules. And so we've developed some formats that groups can just adopt, and I'm going to leave you with the resources for that as well. Is there any questions right now? And don't hesitate at any point to throw questions into the chat. Can't see hands, so unless it's in the chat, I probably won't see it.
I don't think we've got any hands up at the moment. Just a note to participants, if you click the participants button, you can select to raise your hand. There's a blue raise a hand function. So you can either raise a hand or you can drop a message in the chat if you did have a question you wanted to ask. So there's one from Natish there who's presenting later on today. He said, please, John, can you explore voluntary versus non-voluntary?
Yeah, a super quick note on that. One thing, we've been listing out principles for these groups, and again, I'm going to leave you with a little bit of a guide that suggests some principles. We do notice like the principles are going to differ if it's like a project group where there's a higher level of commitment, where, you know, maybe there's a contract even, and you're going to get paid for some work you do with a project team. A lot of this kind of methodology can be used for project groups, but we do notice there is some differences between people voluntarily committing versus committing in that way. And, you know, some of you who maybe are educators or trainers or people who host events will also know, you know, even the commitment of people paying a little bit of money sometimes for an experience can cause them to value it a bit more from the start, or be more likely to show up every time, for example. But of course, that can be achieved through social agreements as well, you know, inviting people at that first meeting especially. What are we committed to? Are we committed to, you know, being on our computers? Like, it's kind of crazy sometimes if you have a group that meets and one person's on the phone and the screen's all shaky. So you might make some agreements, some principles around that at the start. And not seeing any other questions, I'm going to toss it to Nancy to bring us into first a little bit of exercise.
Thanks, John. So I guess if you feel comfortable, I invite you, now just to find your own space. That might mean that you close your eyes. It might mean that you just turn away from your screen so that you're looking outside. If you're someone who enjoys journaling, you've got a piece of paper there in front of you, then maybe you just turn away from the screen and journal through this process. I'm going to just, I guess, lead you through a process to give you a sense of what these pods can be. And in this, I invite you really to not think about this within the constraints that you already know, but just to I guess to go to a place of imagining what might be possible. So in that space that you've created for yourself, I just invite you to imagine a small group. That small group of people who you meet with on a regular basis. You might know those people, but you also might not know them. You might never have met them before. Potentially, they could be people coming together from anywhere in the world, or maybe they're people who are in your geographical neighbourhood. And then that group in coming together around a cadence that you've decided together, you meet for a purpose. There's a shared intention that brings you together. And that shared intention and the cadence with which you meet becomes the basis of your pod. And so as you're picturing this group of people who you're meeting with, if you could custom make this experience, this group of people going forward from this week, from tomorrow, from next week, you know, what is the thing that you would invite a group to join you in, that thing that you need in your life right now? It could be a study pod where you're joining together with others to actively learn something. It could be just a care pod, people who come together on a regular basis simply to share and to provide support. It might be an accountability pod, a group of you who keep each other on track with your work worlds or with something else that you're doing in your life. It might be an activity pod. So what is that thing, that intention that would really meet your needs right now? From today, from next week. And then as you visualize that pod, you know, is it a pod that could have people that don't know in, that you don't know in it? Or does it need to be a pod of only people that you know? Could it be a pod that's spread geographically? Or does it need to be a pod that is just in your neighborhood? And as you're thinking about that pod, feel what that pod feels like. You know, what is that experience of joining together with people around a shared intention? And for a moment, just let yourself rest into that feeling, that experience. And then just when you're ready, coming back into this shared space together. And so from here, we're going to take you into breakout groups of 3 people. And within those breakout groups, I'm going to put a couple of prompts into the space between you all. And perhaps if you use maybe 2 minutes, what are we at now? 6:15, before 6. Yeah, maybe let's make it 90 seconds, 1.5 minutes if we can organise that with the tech guys, with the tech crew. So 90 minutes each. And the 2 prompts that I'd like you to explore are, where in your life, what's the opportunity in your life right now to manifest and call in that pod that you just imagined? Or perhaps the opportunity in your life right now to facilitate that experience for others. And then your second question within this breakout is around, what are 2 rituals or principles which you feel would be really essential for that pod that you've just envisaged, that you've just dreamt of, that pod that is going to enrich and support you in your life moving forward over the next few weeks? So those are the 2 questions. I think we lose them when we go into the breakout rooms. So maybe, you know, if you've got a quick chance to write them down, do so. It's also possible we might be able to broadcast in. So you'll head out into the breakout rooms now. Jessie, can you just explain that process again for people?
Yeah, so what Stuart will do is he's going to randomly assign 3 people to each breakout room. So you'll get a little pop-up on your screen in just a minute saying, yes, I'd like to go to this breakout room. So just click yes, join the breakout room, and then Stuart will also hopefully be able to broadcast in those 2 questions to direct your discussion with that group. And so did you want 90 seconds per question? Cool, so that's
no,
a total...
per person. Per person.
Oh, per
and
person.
If you can tackle both questions within that, that's great. Or if the conversation just goes somewhere else, then that's great too.
Perfect. So when it's time to come back in a few minutes' time, Stuart will in the breakout rooms, and you'll just be able to click to return to this main room where we can wrap things up. So how long in total, Nancy, did you want us to be in breakout rooms for?
Maybe put it at 5 minutes.
5 minutes. Perfect.
Yep.
All right. Stuart will do that now.
Yeah, and just go ahead and use all that last minute. You're going to get a 1-minute warning, but our time together is precious. So just keep chatting with each other until we come back into the main room together. All right. I hope you had a nice conversation with the folks in your small group there. And just by way of harvest, because we don't have a lot of time to have a group chat about it now, but I'd love even just one point of something that stuck out to you. Maybe I'll ask specifically, what's one principle or ritual that you think that a future pod of yours would adapt, or what's the most important ritual or principle you've been thinking about? And we can do the waterfall. So if you just type it in the box and wait for a second, just give everybody about 60 seconds. And in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. So fun. Clarity, regular connections, storytelling, inventing new rituals to reflect values. Yeah, creating together, connect from the heart. So nice. Kindness and communication, positivity, mutuality. I'm curious about that one. Inclusion. Awesome. So just before we all head off here, we've just got 2 minutes, and I just want to make sure that we leave you adequately with these resources. We've tossed them in the living document for this session, so you can access them there as well as access our contact information. But let me just share again this slide deck. So we've got this pods guide. It's got all the concepts I shared, plus a bunch of rituals, a bunch of formats that we've been developing and open sourcing. So they're tested for the most part. And yeah, really interested to hear any feedback on them from folks. One thing that just came to mind that I didn't mention, there is one principle that I do want to kind of share with you around that voluntary thing, is the idea of beginning with the end in mind, or the idea of having a horizon for your pod, at which point it would fade away. Nothing lasts forever, and I think especially if you're coming together around care, it can sometimes be hard to let things go. So really starting at the beginning saying, hey, we're gonna go for 3 months, and then we're gonna check in and see how it's going. Is it still serving us, or do we want to maybe compost this group and maybe we'll find other groups, or maybe be done, or maybe we just need to change it a bit to keep going. Finally, we'd love to hear what you're learning. That's the nature of these open source projects. You know, take these ideas, use them, remix them, and then do please share back with us, and we'd love to be in conversation with you. Nancy?
Yeah, and if anyone wants to, you know, chat further about some of the specifics that you know, we're using, and obviously it's kind of very personal and it's very individual. John and I are in different pods. There's other people within the network who are in pods doing different things. But if you want to, if any of you want to chat specifics, feel free to get in contact. You know, we'd love to facilitate that.
Yeah, or any cohort programs that people are running, super interested to see how you help a large network of folks form into these groups. Thanks, everyone. That's our time.
Fantastic. Thank you both so much. Just before everyone goes, I'd just like to invite you all, because this is focused on action, this session and all of our sessions today, I've added a column to that shared document in that contact table. If you'd like to join a pod or start a pod and looking for people, maybe you can just drop it in there as well. Maybe you connected with someone a lot in that little breakout. So, you know, take action now while it's all fresh if you want.